Guys, the next thing, what we want to do on the Porcupotamus is really optimize the intake. Okay, so we have a couple more things that we can do before we really try and go up to maybe more boost. At Fasterproms, with one of the big things that we try and do, what really sets us apart, is optimizing every single little component in every step of the way. In order to get the intake completely optimized, I mean, the AFE is an awesome unit to begin with. Let's just say that for what it is. But when you put a tremendous demand for more air on it, like what that supercharger is trying to generate, and then more and more boost, somehow, some way, you're going to come into some sort of limitation. And I believe we have a big limitation in the throttle body and in the intake. So this intake right here, we just measured it. The outside diameter was about 3.7, and the inside was right about, just shy of about 3.5 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some of the other cold air intakes that we have and sell for other applications. Like we have a CTSV Gen 3 cold air intake, and we might just kind of cut one of those up and modify it and extend it and use some of our couplers. And we're going to have our beautiful Nick Williams throttle body. As you heard me say this before, this thing is not a car part. This is a metallic work of art, and it really is freaking beautiful. We have a little segment of what goes into making one of these, and it is absolutely fascinating watching the CNC machines do their little dance. It is really cool. We'll show you guys that a little bit later. But right now, we have our 87mm throttle body, and we're going to go to the 103mm throttle body. Our snout on the blower has been ported to accept this throttle body from the get-go. Okay, going from the throttle body backwards, let's kind of talk about this. So we have at 103mm throttle body, we're going from an 87 to 103mm throttle body. Kind of think of that as that might be our restriction point. Okay, so once we address this, we now have this, and you can see the size difference. This right here is a 4.5 inch outside diameter, and this is a 3.7 outside diameter. Inside diameter of about a 3.5, and this is an inside diameter of about 4.2. So we might have to cut up about 2 of these and couple it together, but we're getting a good idea as to where we need to be, and we have our coupler right there of what should work quite nicely. We'll be able to make that work in one fashion or another there. Now this might not be the prettiest thing, but nobody makes a 4.5 inch cold air intake for an Escalade. And most certainly the intake isn't going to be as pretty as that darn throttle body. So, you know, my wife's kind of gotten used to the power, and she's a junkie. So she wanted a little bit more power, and here we are trying to make a little bit more power. We have another thing that we're going to try and do. So the exhaust actually is a 3.5 inch, and we're going to try and do a cutout in there to see if we can pick up any and extract any little bits more power. We've done a number of things to really optimize this ADM package. So I am trying to optimize, once again, that low-hanging fruit, just all that little itty-bitsy little things that add up, making little tidbits of power here and there, but I am being a little bit cheap, you know, not wanting to get that lower pulley, you know, because I want to say it's roughly about $800 or $900 or so, but yeah, it's probably not going to be enough. Wife's going to want more boost. It's just the way it is, you know. She's a power junkie. So let's talk about some of the other things that we got here. This is our CTSV expansion tank. This is a 1.8 liter expansion tank that is meant for a CTSV Gen 2. And we decided, hey, you know, it would be a lot easier if we just installed this guy right here than trying to redesign one or anything like that. We kind of had an open area right there. So George put in a couple bolts right there, and I made a very redneck mount so that this thing stays on the bottom there. It does clutter it up just a little bit, but what we had before is our capacity for cooling was about 0.8 gallons. So our capacity for cooling is about 0.8 gallons, and this thing does generate a lot of heat. So if we can really almost triple the amount of cooling capacity that we have, it's going to take a lot longer for it to heat up. And furthermore, this is all hot water coming out of this and going into a larger reservoir and kind of cooling, and then it goes through the heat exchanger and goes back again. So it's really another heat knockdown. So we haven't dynoed it since we put this on there, but we now have the ability to put ice in there. So it is a pretty neat little option, the fact that we went from 0.8 gallons to now we've got about 2.6 gallons. Really helpful. This works fantastic on the CTSV Gen 2s. We normally sell these things for about 360 bucks. Small little item that we added to this. We're really happy to try it, and it does stay cool. We can be out pounding on it, and I can come in there and touch the water temperature, and it's probably about 90-95 degrees in about 95 degree air. So that thing really does work. So the other night had a small little mishap. I was out racing someone and kind of did about 5 pulls or so in a short amount of time. And so I don't know if you guys remember, but we do have that factory muffler in the factory location. And with as much power as this Porcupotamus is making, it moves a lot of volume of heat and airflow. So take a look at what happened. Now, I would not have expected this to happen at all, but it did. So this is kind of the aftermath of this. This is all melted, spackly, kind of boiling looking plastic and all that junk. So it's not only this, oh yeah, that's good, yeah. And oh my gosh, look down in there. And but yeah, let's look at the bottom too here. So this is all basically dripping, you know, molten plastic there. And like I said, it's a factory muffler in the factory location. So in order to kind of prevent that and to determine if that muffler is in fact a restriction, we're going to go ahead and put in a 3.5 inch cutout. But I don't want just like any kind of rednecky 3.5 inch cutout. I would really like to have that 3.5 inch cutout to possibly a bullet muffler. You know, it's just maybe just taking the edge off the trashy just like a little bit, you know. I mean, it's you know, an open header Escalade going down the track. I mean, that's just silly obnoxious. I don't want to go that far. I mean, we can make it trashy and rednecky, but that's just a little too far. So if we can put a muffler on our dump, I think it'll be a little less trashy than what we're at there now. See how it pans out. Guys, if there's anything I've learned about dyno, it's that you really should re-dyno the car on the same day at the same dyno, same conditions. So guys, about 2 months ago, we dynoed the Escalade and it made about 665 wheel horsepower on about 40% E85. So here in today, right now, we're going to re-dyno and find out exactly where we're at. It's fair to us and it's fair to the people that we're testing parts. If we were to go ahead and throw it back on the dyno and it's down 15 or 20 horse for whatever reason, or if it's high, we don't want to be able to, you know, mislead or anything like that. We want to be able to accurately represent exactly what the car made today in today's weather at pretty much this time frame. If you own a dyno, cars can make different kind of power through the morning, the evening, or the middle of the day. Just air density changes, and even though we have the correction factor with the dyno, it's not perfect. So we're going to re-dyno it, find out where we're at, and then go from there, and we'll show you guys what we pick up step by step. So guys, we got a richer mixture right here. We're down a little bit on power, but no big deal whatsoever. Made 643 about, and the torque had a little bit of a funny spike. Should have been somewhere about maybe 610, maybe still very close to what we had, about 630 actually is very close to what it should be. I'm gonna try and fix the air fuel and we'll see what happens from there, but we're right near where you were, so I'm pretty happy with that. So guys, this is a really interesting thing. This is why I'm doing this modification here. What we're having is we're having a vacuum on the front side of the snout is where we're drawing so much air in. And what the vacuum means is that we're not at atmospheric air. So we're having a pressure drop there, and so much so that we're pulling over an inch of vacuum. So right there we see about 94 kPa, and what that's doing is that is saying that, you know, we are not, we're having such a demand for airflow that it is not able to keep up upstairs. So that's about 6,500. I do expect most of our gains to be higher in the RPMs. So we are a bit rich. The duty cycle doesn't exactly work the same way with direct injection. Usually want to stay, you know, pretty darn close to about what it considers 20%, and you have much less of an injection time in the fact that with direct injection, you have less time for that injector actually to open. See, with a port fuel injection, you can have that injector squirt while that intake valve is closed. So that amount of fuel, that emulsified mixture of fuel is sitting there waiting and then that valve opens and it draws it in. Not so on direct injection. You have just while the valve is open, so you have less time for that injector to accomplish the same amount of fueling. Thus, the injection timing has to be very, very crucial, and your injector base pulse is going to be very, very low. So on another car, you know, we might see somewhere in the neighborhood of say 12 to maybe as much as 15, and if we're really out of injector, somewhere about 20 milliseconds base pulse width. Right now, we're only at 5. However, our injector base pulse is high for a direct injection car. So we're going to go ahead and try and clean this up a little bit, and we're going to see exactly what we pick up when this is dialed in right on the money. Alright, so we got a pretty good established baseline from where we're at right now. I made a couple pulls at about 640 and 621 torque. So we're going to start there. We're going to say that that is our solid baseline. Air temperature's decent, coolant temperature's decent. It's still about 90 degrees inside here right now. Yeah, 89 degrees to be exact. And we're going to go ahead and build a cold air and put the throttle body on there, and we'll see what we got. Alright, so we got this factory throttle body that is ported. And we are removing this, and we're going to stick our 103 Nick Williams on there, and we're going to see how she goes. Alright, so on this particular one, this is only about 4 bolts, and it just depends on if your cold air is going to be a pain in the butt, so that you can get to it pretty easily. And this one being, because it's a woman, it is. If you guys are familiar with Pac-Man, okay, kind of think of like, you know, much bigger, mo better. Alright, so guys, right now my hunch is that the throttle body was the bottleneck. We're going to stick with this cold air right now. I got to go to get it welded up here in just a moment, but we're going to try this first. This is the quick and dirty, so we're doing that first. Okay, look at that big silver beauty in there. So this might be a small problem because in order to get this here coupler on, we had more and more of a kink as we went to go push that thing on there. So I got a feeling this is going to really choke out our throttle body and possibly might give us a little bit of a skewed result. Our clamp that we had before, which nicely fit that guy, doesn't fit whatsoever on our new throttle body because of the bigger outside diameter. We're going to run a couple runs with the no clamp, and then we're going to redesign this area right here. So we have to figure out some way to make this match to that. Alright, so we're going to try this out, and we'll see what kind of intake vacuum we get with just the throttle body change like that. I don't think it's going to be that much because we're still going to have probably equal restriction in here and there, but hey, this is why we test like this. We're going to learn something as we test. Alright guys, we did 3 runs with the new throttle body, and one of them was botched because it kind of downshifted and I put a little extra heat in it. The first run was 660 and 632. Okay, that is a bit better up top, and I kind of felt that that might have to do a little bit with it. The blower was cooler, so we did another backup run. Again, not really giving it a lot of cool down time. That one was 650 and 624. You gotta kind of, when dynoing, you gotta kind of look in grays, not necessarily black and whites. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. We're averaging more power all the way throughout the curve, and particularly more and more upstairs, and that's kind of what I expected. Now bear in mind exactly what I was saying about that elbow is more kinked with this throttle body, so I don't think it's a super fair shakedown with this throttle body, but we're up a solid 10 where we're at right now. In some areas, you know, we're up about 16 at certain little peaks in the curve. So I do think that it is definitely a unit that is going to better the overall setup. It's just this isn't, when we put that coupler on there, it kind of kinked the induction a little bit more. So hopefully when we put the other 4.5-inch inlet tube that goes along with it, we should see some sort of gain with that as well. So let's get to that. But this is really looks like a good pickup, especially up in the higher RPMs. All right, so with our throttle body, the Nick Williams 103 that we have on there, we're still getting kind of the vacuum up there. So let's see what we got. So we're still at an inch of vacuum right there, about 6,300 RPM. So let's see what happens with the cold air. Hopefully the cold air will give us a little bit less vacuum, and we'll be able to see that number get closer to 101.3. So 101.3 kPa is atmospheric at sea level, and we are right at sea level. Hopefully we can kind of see that. That does still vary upon the day, but as close as we can be to that is telling us that we are eliminating restrictions in the induction track. This is the ID that we're coming from. This is the ID that we are going to. So hopefully this alleviates our restriction. $400 intake, not scared. We're gonna make this work. So this guy is on a taper, and that's gonna be no fun to deal with, but we're gonna stick her in there, and hopefully we don't have the same type of wonky angle that we had to deal with before, but it looks like we might. All right, so down here we got our little fan support deal. I'm gonna cut that guy in half with the pneumatic air saw. Okay guys, it is about 1:30 in the morning. I struggled like hell to get this darn intake on there. I'll show you it. It is certainly not anything pretty. Trying to get that 4.5 inch intake into that confine really just didn't quite work well. I actually lost my last little pneumatic, little air saw blade there, buried somewhere within the car, so just had to kind of deal with it. All right, so in our tuning though, this is really, really important. So we went from basically like a 3.75 to a 4.5 inch. I'm gonna basically throw about 25% fuel at it. So I took my mass airflow calibration right here, and I multiplied 1.25 grams all the way across the board. So I already did that. We're gonna load that back up. That should be able to get me somewhere in the ballpark. So basically, because we're going to be seeing about 25% less airflow, we're going to calculate 25% back at it to get the same exact air-fuel ratio. That's the idea. So we go to our scanner, make sure we're disconnected there, and we calibrate. It doesn't take too long with this puppy. So reflashing usually is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45 seconds with this here. I'm not redoing the transmission at the same time, so I can actually shut off, you know, or at least say I don't want to recalibrate the transmission at the same time. So getting late, getting tired. That thing kicked my butt. It was really kind of such a basic thing that you wouldn't think would be a problem, but all right, so I'm cranking it up, and the thing is kind of stumbling around, and it's telling me that we're adding 22% plus that percentage, so I'm gonna throw about maybe another 25% at it. I was kind of off by a long shot, so we're gonna throw about another 25% at it all the way across the board here. That should get it to kind of smooth out, but it's definitely sampling very, very low in the grams per second and megahertz. That looks pretty promising. That is 662 and 633, and it's very, 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 very rich. So let's pull some fuel out of this thing and see if we can really pick it up. Let's take a look at the vacuum here. Actually substantially better at 97, 98, and yeah, we're gonna do pretty good here. I think we're gonna do a lot better. So we got better vacuum in our intake tract. I think we'll do very well though. All right, guys, that is 668 and 634 as we're getting hotter. I still got a very neutral air fuel. I say neutral, I kind of mean it's kind of partially rich, kind of. You can still probably take out about 7 or 8% fuel, and we should be able to pick up power, but that is looking very good. It looks like we're definitely alleviated somewhat of a restriction. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more. We're always hoping for more, but that is a very nice and substantial and consistent gain. So we are picking up better power upstairs, as well as bottom end and mid-range torque. All right, guys, this is what the MAF curve looks like of a positive displacement supercharger. It's generally fairly linear right there, okay? This is going to be tweaked a little bit, but we are really close to getting that dialed in well. So this part right here, we're gonna trim a little bit more fuel out, but very little upstairs. So maybe about 4 or 5% down up here, and we're gonna pull out probably about 8 to 10% down here. So that curve is going to be down a little bit more, but it is a very clean curve. It's not jaggedy going up and down and stuff like that. You might see that with a naturally aspirated car with a larger cam. But this is really looking good. Alright guys, that's where we're going to end up here. So we are, after this ADM kit that we got for this Porcupotamus, this thing is now totally and fully optimized. We have one more thing coming at you with it before we go really any further, and that's gonna make a lot more noise. We got a 3.5-inch cutout coming, and this is going to be really fun with this. So we're gonna try and make this a little bit more tasteful than just a normal rednecky cutout there. All right, so let's check out what we got here going on. Remember how we were talking about our vacuum there? We are definitely pulling a lot better. So when we first stab it, we are very close to our atmosphere right there at 100 kPa, and it does diminish as we go up in the RPMs. We are still building a vacuum, but just not nearly as much. So at about 6,300, and our air temperature was warmer. Coolant temp is totally normal. Kind of got our injector duty cycle right back to where we were. So we'll go look at the dyno graph. Very decent gains, all things considered. All right, fellas, this is interesting. Really tired. It's about 2 a.m. here. I kind of wanted to show you the fruits of our labor here. This has really been it's been a long day here, but trying to find some parts and having to make some stuff happen was really difficult here. So before, our best and our average pulls before we did anything was about 640 wheel horsepower and about 620 pound-feet of torque. That was our established average baseline here today. So then we put on the throttle body, and then we kind of had somewhere on the average of maybe like a 655 average. I'm kind of averaging the 660 and 650. We're going to make that about 655, so it's a very decent gain, and it did pick up pretty well. Let's look up here. Once we put our cold air on there, we'd really picked up a lot more on top of that. We got rid of our intake restrictions. So way down low here, all the way at 4,000, we went from about 619 pound-feet of torque to 634. Right about 4,700 here, we went from 608 to about 622 on our best. Up top here, where we were kind of dwindling a little bit there. 635 on up to 658, and our very top end number, 668 horse at about 6,600 RPM. So this thing is able to breathe a lot better. So the ADM package of what we have here is really totally and completely optimized. We've thrown everything that we can at it. So let's go take a look at what we've done here. So guys, do remember that you can get this whole kit from ADM. This is something that we had added on. We spoke about that a little bit earlier, our CTSV expansion tank. This is the Nick Williams 103mm throttle body. It is pretty awesome in the fact that you can throw that thing on there and there is zero changes to the drivability. He spent months getting that thing calibrated just right, and it works exactly the way that he said that it works. It's a very impressive piece. Check out some of his stuff a little bit later here. This is an ugly cold air, and this was just makeshift because we really kind of ran out of time, ran out of couplers. So we had an ugly little kink in there. We still managed to make that work. I didn't have an adapter there, and yes, we do have some duct tape right there because I don't have a 5-inch silicone coupler at the moment. That's not going to stay that way, and yes, I am trashing up a very nice Escalade, but that's just temporary, okay? So don't get mad at me. The wife's going to be happy that she's making more power, and now she's going to be able to make some more noise with the electronic cutout coming up very shortly. That's getting overnighted in, and we're going to try and get that in very quickly. Got a number of things going on with Sam. I know you guys want to see these things get to the track. It has been a mission to try and break away from all my normal work and do all this YouTube stuff and be able to try and order wheels and tires. So I did get some stuff ordered. It is coming. Hopefully very, very shortly we can get the right wheel and tire combination on this bad girl, and she's gonna scoot. We're trying to be, like I said, the fastest late model Escalade. There's a lot of guys making more power, but this is a very well thought out plan. Hopefully it works, and it's a much, much, much more budget build, and I'm all about best bang for the dollar. I'm definitely geeking out on all these tools. This is an incredible amount of tools. So this one you said holds 120, right? Wow. So you can do just about anything with all of these tools. Pretty much whatever you can imagine, you could probably build out of this. Jeez. So that machine holds 48?
48, 40, 40, 120, 60, and 80.
Wow, that's incredible.
There's two big lathes over there. The mill turns hold 72 feet.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. So when you start off machining, what you cut up is one of these giant bars of aluminum. So this is about, you said 2,700 pounds, about 2,750 pounds of aluminum here. So roughly about 916 pounds per of aluminum. It gets cut up to these smaller little chunks. So these get cut up into about 4.5-inch chunks and then put in the machine. What a process. All the pretty aluminum pieces. Anybody need some 92mm throttle bodies, 102mm throttle bodies? Alright, so this machine is set up for Gen 3 and Gen 5 throttle bodies. And so this would be basically, think kind of C5 and C7, and then that machine over there does C6 stuff for Gen 4. All right, so this is stage one. This was a big old piece of aluminum, and they cut all that perimeter of it out, and now it will go get the backside machined off, and then thirdly, it will have the inside machined and radius. Okay, so that's Gen 5 right there, and that will be that.
Gen 5.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, here we go. That is the finished product. So this is stage one, and then we go back to the front side and finish that off. Stage two.
Stage 3 would be coming back in with that bolted up and finishing inside.
Yeah, that's beautiful, though. So just as I was saying that you could put this throttle body on there with 0 tuning changes, what Nick does is it took him literally 3 months of design to try and get this just right with the throttle plate and the area right here. So as that throttle moves up and open, it's trying to maintain a certain amount of airflow. So say for example, if this were to leak too much airflow, this thing would idle at like 2 grand, or it'll be consuming a whole lot of airflow. It might retard the timing, and then the exhaust or the headers might be glowing cherry red, basically retarding timing, trying to get the thing to idle low enough. So the factory computer uses Spark Advance to help control airflow, and with this, it pretty much makes that a heck of a lot easier for you. So I've seen, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood about 10 horsepower, about 12 pound-feet of torque from this throttle body on one of our imported LT4 blowers. But we're going to test that a little bit later here. So this is a 2-part machine. So it machines out the outer part right now, which the machine's over there doing right now, and then it flips, and then it machines the inner part. And you can kind of see all the machining marks of the end mill right there. But what a beautiful piece of machinery, though. That other little gear works right in there and kind of rotates the blade, and there's a shaft that goes right through here. So this is the end piece of the throttle body. The inside is yet to be machined out, but this kind of houses all the electronics right here. And what we're watching is this machine cutting out all of this, making really quick changes to this billet piece of aluminum. Okay, so what we just shown was stage 1. This is stage 2, and then this is stage 3. So last they finish off that right there. All right, so you can actually do this with very, very minimal tuning changes. This is definitely for maximum airflow. So this is something that's really sweet about the machining process. So you start with this and you get this. So that's a lot of material taken out and removed. These are parts of a C7 throttle body that they manufacture here. And they cut them out of a 4-foot stick of these and they just pop them out. It's pretty crazy. So here we have the quality control. Pretty much the last step right there, checking it, making sure that it works. Right on the throttle pedal right there. That's so cool. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been a little bit of a light in your day here. I find it really interesting on all the little tweaks that we can do to make more power, and I hope you guys do as well. Please like and subscribe. Do check out some of our merchandise. It really does help and support what we do. So check the link below on that. Also, we have some more stuff for veterans. Also, we'll have a link on that as well. And we're trying to take more guys out for rides in this, and that's going to be a blast. There's really only one more thing we can do with the Porcupottomus, and that's still more boost. So we got to do a fuel system and more boost, but that is going to be probably a little bit later down the line. But the cutout is going to be a fun thing that we can do with this bad girl. So stay tuned for some more stuff with Sam, and I got to go on some trips, and it's going to be some fun tuning trips, but we'll be coming back at you very shortly. God bless you guys, and we will see you soon.